Hi everybody, a huge welcome to the Colleen Wilson Know Yourself, Show Yourself, Grow Yourself YouTube channel and podcast. We are talking about nervous system restoration today. Wow, this is such a key subject. We've chatted on this channel before about the nervous system, about awareness, so key. Awareness is fully accepting what is going on. It's being aware of our triggers. It is being aware of our states of escalation. Awareness is asking us not to rush to fix, but rather to clock what's happening and to understand it deeply, and then to move into more of a regulatory phase. Regulation is about using somatic practices. It's about engaging the body. It's about that top-down, bottom-up therapeutic approach, a multifaceted, holistic, doing what we can do to restore nervous system regulation. Because when we are regulated, we are the best versions of ourselves, whatever that may be. But our unique signature, our beingness, cannot pulse with that unique signature at its full expression, at its highest expression, if our nervous system is dysregulated. So Dr. Dan Siegel, who I did an immersion course with in Santa Monica and LA in 2015, I think it was, talks about when we have an integrated brain, or when we have a regulated nervous system, we can be FACEs, FACES, flexible, adaptive, coherent, energized, stable. Now, who doesn't want that? So regulation really allows us to be our best self. Once we've been able to regulate our nervous system, we move into phase 3 of Dr. Lineas' Heal Your Nervous System work, which is around restoration. So here we're not just regulating in the moment, but we're actually digging a little bit more into the deeper wounds. We're looking at where we've got embedded alarms, where we've got triggers that are sitting in our nervous system, where there might be even a post-traumatic stress sitting there. And we've got old wounds, and generally what happens with old wounds and with embedded triggers and alarms is that we have created adaptive strategies over time, which is cool. That's how we cope. But it's cool if those strategies are adaptive, not maladaptive. In other words, if they're healthy. And further to that, if we face the issues, the alarms, the triggers, the past trauma, then we don't need to employ coping strategies of any kind any further. So restoration is looking more at the long-term benefit of nervous system work. So really overcoming the adversity to build nervous system flexibility is what we're after. So when we move through these coping strategies, step 1 in restoration is moving from maladaptive to adaptive, and step 2 is more than actually going in to see if we can heal. So what are maladaptive coping strategies? Well, this looks like anything that is taking us away from the issue to distract us, and distraction certainly has its place, but they're done in ways that create more harm than good in the long term. For example, even something like over-exercising, excessive shopping, obviously the good old glass of wine that sometimes we hang for every day, just waiting for that time where the bell rings and it's appropriate for us to have a glass of wine, and we've normalized it in our culture and we've made it acceptable and even funny. It is a maladaptive coping strategy. Overeating, any excess in any way, and including using medication, which again has its place, absolutely. But if it is the lean-to, if it is the thing that props us up, then we've got to ask a question about it. And certainly if it has repercussions like medication side effects, like substance dependency, like a hangover in the morning, like taking us away from our families to go and do whatever it is that's excessive, that's taking us away from our stressor. So what we want to do is we want to bring in adaptive coping strategies that are healthy. And we need to look at what the issue is and how it shows up in our nervous system so that we can really bring in the strategy that marries that. So the aim is to bring about nervous system resilience, to create flexibility and adaptability in the nervous system, to create resilience. In other words, something happens, we feel it, we might feel worried, we might feel stressed, we might feel angry, we might feel sad. We feel the feels and we're able to bounce back from them. So that is the resilience. In other words, we can go down, we can become dysregulated, whether it's hyperarousal or hyperarousal. We can move into those states of dysregulation because sometimes that's what's required to get us to move quickly or take action or respond to something effectively. But then we're able to return to our window of tolerance, to that ventral vagal level, to that sweet spot, to the flow state. So that is what resilience is. It can bring us back there so we can overcome adversity with flexibility, adaptability, with speed even, so that we can get back to that regulated state where we can be the highest, healthiest version of ourselves. Now that's what we want more often. So we need to look at our actions, our behaviors, how we show up in the world, what are our coping strategies. The awareness, because remember these phases, awareness, regulation, restoration, and so on, don't happen as isolated pillars in sequence. They happen in this integrated, ongoing way. So we look at this restoration phase, and with awareness, we consider the beliefs, the behaviors, the actions, the triggers, the way we escalate, how it shows up in the world, and we understand it, and we then bring in the strategies that can balance those out. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story to illustrate this restoration phase. And it's around, so I'm going to tell you a story of my personal life, but the same experience can happen anywhere in the sense that something that's recurring, because stressors can be chronic and ongoing all the time, like an injury, or a person in your workplace or home who's highly dysregulated. Whatever it is, it's a perpetual ongoing issue, or it can be episodic. So you have moments like maybe it's deadline time or month end time or cash flow time or premenstrual time, and so it's episodic, it comes and goes. So and also that thing might be, that event, circumstance might just be stressful in its own right, but it also might have a connection to the past that it's reignited and becomes alive again in the face of that situation. So the example that I'm going to use for you is my son's motor racing. He races karts and he's very competitive. He races at a national level, and in and of itself, when your child is involved in something like motor racing, same with the kids that even, multitude of sports, play rugby, horse ride, etc., you will know it's incredibly stressful to watch them. It's dangerous, it's fast, there's often argy-bargies, accidents and coming together, and in and of itself, it is a stressful thing for a mother to watch their child in an open vehicle race around a track, sometimes in speeds excess of 100 kilometers an hour, in a very competitive, often high jostling type environment. So where it becomes even more of a nervous system issue is that in time gone by, a couple of years ago, my son was in a massive accident and he got flipped out of his cart, and I watched him spiral like a rag doll and land and be dead still. And he had broken his leg, but at that time I didn't even know if he was still alive. Now, we're not allowed on the track. We can't physically get to the track because it's fenced off. So that incident of watching him, of then seeing him lying there and then not being able to get to him, has multiple traumas in it. And it was absolutely terrifying. So coming away from that incident, now I've got the stressful environment anyway, but it's compounded because of the accident. So what happened subsequently is I moved into high levels of nervous system regulation. In fact, at one race, I ended up in the ER. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had a panic attack at the race. And it was just literally this nervous system accumulation. And he was at a national event. This is now some months, even the following year's season, actually. But it was about half a year later. And I thought I was dying. And only on reflection of it and in unpacking and in using awareness and in understanding it, it was a full-blown panic attack. So I moved, as I said, into maladaptive coping strategies and ended up making a joke of it, because this is what we do to justify our coping strategies. So I would end up taking Urbanol at every single race event, which, for those of you who don't know, is an anti-anxiolytic. It's an anti-anxiety medication. It's a benzoid. It is quite freely given out by GPs. At that stage, I was very grateful for it, but it became a dependency. And when I say I made a joke of it, I used to joke with the other moms, oh, I'll be, selling Urbanol before heat one kind of thing. I think I'm gonna pay back the costs of the motor racing by having an Urbanol supply store going for all you ladies. And we would laugh about it. And a lot of the mums actually use the same coping strategy. But the more I got into it and the more dependent I got, the more uncomfortable I became, because I knew it was a crutch. And I also know it has side effects. And I also know that although it helps in the moment, nothing's being healed. Nothing's actually being helped other than I have a maladaptive coping in the moment. Not ideal. But I was nervous to not take it and end up back in the hospital. Yet another trauma. So I started doing some very intensive nervous system work. And you'll be able to see, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see some of the clips that I'm playing of the motor racing. And so you can get a sense of how fast it is and of the argy-bargy, and really appreciate the stress around it. But I wanted to show up in a different way. I wanted to learn how to create adaptive strategies in a very stressful environment. So I started just applying the work that I do more. And subsequent to this leg-breaking experience, I had come across Dr. Lineas' book, Heal Your Nervous System, which helped me build even more adaptive strategies. So what I do is I engage, first of all, the 5 senses, which we've spoken about in the regulation episode, but I do it very actively. So I've got a specific combination of essential oils with me that I've put into a roller. It's my anti-stress combination, and everybody's anti-stress combination will be different. I've got one with all the citrus elements in it, a combination of citrus oils, which I love. And then I've got another one that's more lavender and more adaptive oils. And so I use that with an olfactory focus. I take my hot pad or my beanbag to the track. I make sure that I eat well. And I like crunchy food and I like cold drinks. That's just what works for me. Unless it's a winter race, then I err towards the hot drinks. But I really create this full sensory environment around myself. Make sure that I'm in comfortable clothing and I've got a little fidget thing in my hand. So I'm working my nervous system from a sensory perspective. As I say, make sure that I eat well, that I'm hydrated, that I've rested well the night before. And I take, again, adaptogens, and I use a CBD oil at night and a serenity balm from doTERRA, and I really, really work hard to make sure that I have practiced good sleep hygiene the night before. And then I engage the other senses, the vestibular system and the proprioceptive system. So the vestibular system really is anything where you get to turn. I do these full body swings where I swing my arms from one side of my body to the other, almost sort of slapping my back and my kidneys myself. And I'll just do that while I'm waiting for the race or between heats. And the proprioceptive is that I will when I'm watching him, I will generally always be standing, and I'll push down on a bar at the ledge where I'm watching him, because that's proprioceptive. I'll literally lift my weight off the ground and pull down. I'll also bounce on the back of my heels because that reverberation goes through the vagus nerve. I will push my hands together in like a prayer position, or hold my fingers and pull. So I'll literally grasp my fingers into each other, and I'll pull apart. So these are all different ways that we can bring pressure and proprioceptive input into our nervous system. The banging on my heels is the biggest one, and nobody knows. I'm literally bopping up and down, lifting my weight up, even standing on one leg, then the other for balance, which is engaging the brain in a different way. And these are adaptive coping strategies. And for the majority of this racing season in 2024, where we are now, I have been completely free of any chemical, anti-anxiolytic, any use of Urbanol. I will still use adaptogens like ashwagandha and obviously my oils, but I don't take anything chemical. I don't drink alcohol anyway, but that that wouldn't be a strategy for me. So it really has helped me to engage these very adaptive strategies. And then, importantly, because we're always looking for holistic inputs here, is that we engage the body, the mind, the heart, and the spirit. Okay, because we have implications of anxiety and fear and stress that affect all of those areas of us. So I've told you a lot of the somatic inputs. From a spiritual perspective, I will always engage with what I call Jono's team, my son's team. And so in prayer, I will ask for protection from Archangel Michael, from Raphael, from Saint Christopher, and from his late grandparents. So his Bar, his Granny Bat, and his Grandpa John. And I will just ask them. And so it makes me feel better. And I'll just say, team, keeping him, and I've got a little mantra that I use, so I engage my mind. Please keep him safe, smooth, speedy, and with superhuman capabilities. So this is just my spiritual mental practice that I engage. I'll also, depending on the track and if it's available, go and find a grass patch and take my shoes off, and I will ground into the grass and just take a moment to breathe. And so the breath work that I do is the physiological sigh, and I actually do a little variation of that where I breathe in twice and then exhale. So it's 2 sharp inhales through the nose, hold it for a moment, and then a long, slow exhale through the mouth like this. And in that exhale, shoulders drop, jaw unclenches. It really is an incredibly powerful breathwork technique. I find I actually just need to do 3 of them, normally per heat when he's racing, but 3 seems to just reset for me. So these are, and then on the emotional front, I will acknowledge what I'm feeling. So I will say, and this I do, even if he's at the starting line, I'll say, okay, I'm feeling anxious, fearful, worried, hopeful, excited, optimistic, and because our emotions, there's polarity in our emotions, generally always. So I'll acknowledge it, and I'll acknowledge what I'm feeling that feels hard, but I'll also acknowledge that I'm excited and I'm hopeful and I'm trusting and grateful. So bringing that emotional literacy in, again, engages heart and head, because we're using our mind to name, to articulate, and we're using our heart to feel. So you can see how body, heart, mind, and spirit have been engaged. And then lastly, in terms of old beliefs, and old wounds and old traumas, yes, he went flying out of his cart. Yes, he broke his leg. Yes, it was very scary. Is he in any way damaged by that? No. Did everything work out for the better? Yes. So we don't always have that story when we've got an embedded stress or trauma. Sometimes it didn't end well. But for us to make sense of that is the most powerful thing we can do. So in my case, it did end well, but for us just to be able to develop a coherent narrative over past events is enough for it to settle in our nervous system and not own us. So I'm able to say, he's fine, he's healthy, he's well, he's safe. And yes, we had that traumatic event, but the worst case scenario didn't happen. And so I actively remind myself of that. And then lastly, I remind myself that he and we choose that he does this. So I know, again, a lot of life isn't choice or doesn't feel like choice. Or more often there is choice even when we think there isn't, even if that choice is just how we recalibrate our thinking. But we chose to be here. And so I say to myself, so I choose to be here well. I choose to be here happy. I choose to be here calm. So these are just some recalibration of thoughts, what I call mental gymnastics, that again help us to settle into that space. So as a recap, we've got awareness, which is about knowing ourselves, deeply, deeply knowing our triggers, our escalation, what's showing up for us, why and how, when, and what can we do about it. We move into regulation, which is the grow yourself in my model, know yourself, grow yourself. Regulation about using practices to regulate and restore calm and flow to our nervous system. And restoration moves more into the show yourself. This is about how do we do this stress space better? How do we engage with it? How do we do the long-term work? So know yourself, show yourself. Know yourself, grow yourself, show yourself, nervous system awareness, regulation, and restoration. So I hope that that has been in service of you and your journeys and your places of stress, trauma, burnout, and overwhelm, and can offer you some insights that you can bring practically and immediately into your personal and professional lives to help build nervous system restoration and regulation to be able to be the best version of you and create healthy, holistic, balanced strategies for a whole healthy life. Thank you.